Good afternoon. Thank you for being here. I'm Dan Montgomery. I'm president of the Illinois Federation of Teachers, and we're here today all together, education stakeholders, if you will, to talk about House Joint Resolution Constitutional Amendment 26, introduced by Speaker Madigan last week. I'm going to say a few words, and we'll have all these good folks say a couple words as well, and then maybe time for questions. So let me just introduce them initially. I'm Dan Montgomery, IFT, Cinda Klickna, president of the Illinois Education Association, Amy Ballinger-Cole with Advance Illinois, Matt Brew, superintendent of District 202, Porta, and Jessica Handy from Stand for Children. So, and I believe Diane Rutledge from the Large Unit District Association will be here too. We're here because we care about schools and kids and the future of our children in Illinois. It's no secret that by any measure, and people measure it in various ways, but by any measure, Illinois ranks either 49th, 50th, or in the bottom about 5% of states in the United States in terms of state support for education. We all recognize this is a significant problem. It impairs our kids, our schools, and the future of the state. And we want to work on that and make significant movement to repair that deficit. In the resolution put forward by Speaker Madigan last week, the so-called millionaire surcharge, we see a tremendous opportunity here to raise over $1 billion annually to go to children and schools in Illinois. We know the state constitution tells us we have to do more in terms of state dollars for education. Our conscience tells us we have to do more in terms of state dollars for education. And the people of Illinois have told us this. In November, over 65% of those voting on this question, when it was advisory, supported this surcharge going for education. We think it's time to take the next step to pursue that. There are many fiscal challenges in Illinois, and this is an important key to redressing the wrong of lack of support for schools in Illinois. So let me turn now to my friend Cinda Klickna, president of the Illinois Education Association.
Thank you all for coming this afternoon. You know, the facts make it clear that this amendment is a much-needed piece of the education funding puzzle. The Education Funding Advisory Board, EFAB, on which I sit and also Dan, has determined that to offer every student in this state an adequate education, the state should be spending $8,899 per pupil. But just last month, the Illinois State Board of Education recommended spending $6,119, the same dollar figure that the state paid in 2010. So I want you to think about that. We are thousands of dollars short for our students in this state. In 2015, our state is failing to keep pace with the needs of our students. And the Rauner budget only proposes $5,782 per student. If this state were to actually follow the EFAB recommendation, we would need more than $4 billion. And so this amendment is a way to get us on the right path to start looking at real funding for education. It is illogical to believe that we can allow revenue sources to go away, and that at the same time we're going to be able to continue to provide a high-quality education for all students. So our children are being cheated out of their right, the opportunity to receive a high-quality education. This amendment is a step in the right direction and would help take care of the inequality that occurs throughout this state based upon a student's zip code. The IEA strongly supports the adoption of this amendment as a first step toward ending the education crisis in this state, a state that has had this crisis for decades. So thank you. And I will now turn it over back to you, Dan. Or?
Yeah. Okay. Next is Matt Brew with the School Management Alliance.
Sorry.
Since 2009, state revenue funds for K-12 education has decreased by nearly $1 billion. For the last several years, local school districts like mine has been prorated at 89%. At the same time, local school districts have been forced to follow unfunded mandates placed upon them by the state legislature. The combination of less funding and more requirements has put public education in a dire situation. We do appreciate the priority placed on K-12 education in our recent budget discussions, but we are supportive of comprehensive long-term fiscal and tax policy reform. This resolution and amendment is one component of a long-term plan that should be considered by all. Again, we realize that the passage of this amendment will not bring dollars to our district this year alone. This is a long-term solution to a problem that we've been dealing with for a long time. We need to step past the short-term solutions that we've thrown out and not stuck with. We need to make more flexibility for schools in hopes to relieve us of mandates and regulations that cause our schools to run inefficiently and ineffectively. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Jessica Handy from Stand for Children.
Thanks, Dan, and thanks to all of you for being here today. I'm with Stand for Children here today to commend Speaker Madigan's focus on increasing investment in education and proposing House Joint Resolution Constitutional Amendment 26. Our schools have lost hundreds of millions of dollars over the last 5 years, almost $1 billion of cuts to our public schools, and this hurts the education our children receive, and it hurts the professionals in the classroom. Stand for Children supports increased early childhood education opportunities, equitable funding, support and accountability for all types of public schools, strategic supports for school districts that are struggling. But all of these strategic investments at their core depend upon having adequate funding for our education system.
Thank you, Jessica. Amy Ballinger-Cole with Advance Illinois.
Hello, everyone. This proposal is an important first step toward restoring the millions that have been cut from K-12 education in recent years. While not a complete solution to our education funding concerns, this proposal can start to move our students and schools toward an adequate base level of funding. Money alone will not improve education or close achievement gaps. However, money does matter. Illinois ranks as one of the most regressive states nationwide in how it distributes state funds to schools. We also suffer from some of the nation's largest achievement gaps between low-income students and their peers. A more equitable funding formula, in tandem with the proposal in HJR CA 26 for increased revenue, would begin to open the doors of opportunities for all Illinois students. Thank you.
And finally, Diane Rutledge with the Large Unit District Association, LUDA. Diane.
Thanks, Dan. LUDA represents the large unit districts across the state, representing more than half the students of the state of Illinois. And our districts, just like everyone else's, have been very busy making cuts to both their programs as well as their personnel, therefore their offerings for all their students in the state. So therefore, we are standing here also with everyone else to support this bill. This measure is one piece of the puzzle. No one thinks this is the only answer. It's not the last answer, but it is a piece of the puzzle because it's going to take many of these different strategies and different reforms that you've already heard discussed here this afternoon in order to be able to get us on the even balance that we need to be. More than 2/3 of the school districts in Illinois are in deficit spending. That should not be the case. If you're deficit spending, it means you're not doing the most that you would like to be able to do for all of your students. So LUDA stands, again, prepared to work with all the others, and that's what we think is a real strength of this, is that you see the collaboration here among the different stakeholders for education, speaking in one voice in support of this measure. Thank you.
Thanks, Diane. And just to conclude, and that voice is important that you hear, that the voice of teachers in schools, paraprofessionals, the people who work around schools, the people who care about parents and communities and children, all here together saying, look, we are going to get out there and going to work. We're going to work for this measure. It's the right thing for the most wealthy in Illinois to pay their fair share to help fund schools properly. And we encourage and urge all lawmakers of both parties in both houses of the General Assembly to vote in support of this and to work for this as well. So thank you for your time, and we take some questions if there are any.
You said you needed $4 billion. Do you need $4 billion total or $4 billion?
Well, that Cinda referred to that. That is the new money. The EFAB report, which looks at an adequacy study, has its recommendation for the foundation level, if it were in place, would require the addition of $4 billion additional. This resolution, studies show that it would produce about, with this amendment in place, about $1.1 billion more.
Where do you get that $1.1 billion number?
I believe that's from a CTBA study, and I think there's going to be some information going around that details some of that.
So is there anything in the resolution or the bill that would prevent the state from simply reducing other GRA funding schools like those?
I don't know if anyone wants to weigh in on that. I think if you look at the language of the resolution, it clearly targets it in a way that says this has to go and be new money for education. So,
Pretty much what the lottery bill says.
well, I think that, that was a bill. This would be constitutional language, so I think there may be some other factors at play there.
That's an excellent point. The other question is, what are the other steps, and how is it that you don't think that doing this will cause most people to say, well, we did it for education, we're done?
Happily, if other people want to weigh in as well. The other next steps? Okay. It's okay.
I mean, I think we are saying that this is one piece of a huge conversation that needs to happen about quality education in this state. And, obviously when the income tax was not extended, we added another big hole into the state budget. So we look at this as one aspect of a way to put money into education and start getting us on the right track.
Well, just if I can follow up.
Sure.
It's a kind of graduated income tax. That's why a constitutional amendment is needed. Are there any legislators who'd be willing to put forth a resolution for a real graduated income tax like other states have?
Well, I'm sure there are, and that's been discussed before in Illinois, and I'm sure that discussion is going to continue as well. I think we got to focus on what's right in front of us right now. We have a resolution put out there by the Speaker of the House, who signals his strong support for it, and we think now the time is right. And I would go back to November when you have 1.8 million Illinoisans plus saying we ought to do this. It's the right thing to do. It's doable. It's something that would be good for our economy in the long run, because we know the greatest engine to our economy is education.
In addition to supporting this, what about the bipartisan measure in the Senate between Andy Menard and Jason Barrett? Are you guys going to be supporting their legislation as well?
I think, and other people may want to speak to this, I think probably there may be differences of opinion among the organizations represented here around the current version of that, but I think we probably all share in what people have said here today. We've got to work on equity in the state, absolutely, and we have to work on adequacy. And this resolution that we're talking about today is an important brick in the adequacy bridge we'd like to build that leads to equity as well.
I think all of us are taking a look at how the Menard bill will be rolled out, talking with our legislators about the need for funding, and looking at changes that are being proposed. So I think all of us are together in saying funding for education is a priority, and we're willing to look at many aspects and think about how we move the state ahead.
Yeah, I think that's a great summary. I don't think there's anything additional.
Any other questions?
Have you talked to Barrett and Menard about the specific proposal?
I haven't. I don't know if anyone else has. I think this today begins, there's going to be a lot of the speaker introduced this last week, as I understand, so I think this begins the process. It's one reason we're here. We want to sort of kickstart this and begin this process and discussion going forward. So thank you, everybody, for being here. We really appreciate it.
Yes, thank you.